I'm going to talk about some of the programs that many of you have heard about. There are some of the key programs on the economic development side that we work with. I'm not going to read down through the slides because there's a lot of text. I'll just kind of fly through and maybe hit a few headlines, some of the primary points that might be of interest. PEAK, or Promoting Employment Across Kansas, it would probably be considered as our primary device or tool to help create and retain jobs in Kansas currently. You can see the purpose: encouraging job growth and retention, using employee withholding taxes that then can be retained by the employer. That forms the incentive. There are various eligibility criteria, which you can see here. I'm not going to read down through those. Tied to size of project, and then programs like this are typically based on some sort of a wage standard so that you're trying to create and improve the number of jobs that are at a certain wage level or above. Some of the things that are ineligible for PEAK uses: bioscience, because the KBA is in force, and they actually use the withholding from the bioscience projects. It's one that's not. Gambling, etc., as you can kind of see down through what the kinds of things that aren't eligible projects. We don't want to, there are requirements that we not work with companies that are in arrears in their taxes, and also companies that are in federal bankruptcy proceedings, so that's important factors. And then the criteria also require that the company provides an adequate health care plan, paying 50% or more of the employee's premium for health care. The benefit, this is the plus, why companies are interested. If you are an eligible PEAK applicant, you can receive, again, the withholding that are generated by your employees for a term up to 10 years, and that's dependent upon the size of the project. There is a cut or a break line between projects up to 99 jobs and then projects over 100 jobs in terms of the number of years that you can receive the benefit. And then there's also a qualifier if it's a project that does not meet that wage standard tied to the median wage at the county level, there is an alternate that we'll see here in just a minute that can allow a company to qualify, albeit for a fewer number of years. And that criteria, the second qualifier is based on the NAICS code, which is the North American Industrial Classification standard, and that is a wage that's by industry. If you qualify under that wage and it happens to be below the median wage, it limits the number of years you can qualify for PEAK, but you can still potentially qualify. The High Performance Incentive Program is primarily designed to encourage capital investment. And part of the criteria involve higher paying jobs in a skilled workforce as standards for qualification or eligibility. Again, you must pay above the average industry wage, and again, that's that NAICS code, which is an industrial standard, and we do it on a regional or county basis. The metropolitan counties, we do it by county because they typically will have enough volume of companies to make it a fair standard. In the more rural parts of the state, we do it on a regional basis so that we have a number of companies in that classification to do comparisons with. And then on the training side, because this is also to encourage training, you can either qualify through being part of one of our training programs, the Kit and Cur, which were mentioned earlier, or by investing an amount equal to 2% or more of payroll in employee training during the time that you're receiving the benefit. So those are the two ways to qualify on the training. There are prohibitions about production agriculture, mining, construction, and retail currently. Those are not eligible NAICS codes. The benefit is the tax credit on the capital investment. It's essentially a 10% credit on capital investment. If you invest over $1 million in the above counties and the metro counties, and the qualifying investment is $50,000 in all the other counties, and that's kind of the threshold or the standard, and you can receive the benefit for the investment made above that level. You also can receive a project exemption from sales tax, which is a pretty critical issue for a lot of companies, because you look at the sales tax, the combined state and local can be 8-9%, sometimes more, and that's a benefit you can receive to exempt that sales tax on the materials going into the construction, the installation, the equipment, et cetera. So that's a significant advantage. And then there is a workforce training tax credit that's available if you meet certain qualifying standards. But again, the primary benefits are the income tax credit and then that exemption from sales tax. Another program that has not been used a lot, but it generates a lot of attention, has been very successful in some cases, is the sales tax accelerated revenue bonds, or STAR bonds as they're called. The purpose of these is to encourage development of attractions and destination retail that will attract outside funding, and by that we mean dollars from elsewhere, and then keep Kansas dollars in Kansas as opposed to going somewhere else to have the kinds of benefits or the kind of amenities that perhaps we can place here in Kansas. The eligibility criteria or the process essentially begins at the local level, where at the local level they will determine an interest in doing a STAR bond project. They will identify a district or an area within which the STAR bond benefit would not only be offered, but also where that sales tax would be captured. Then the process involves coming to the Department of Commerce, and the Secretary then would approve that project area or district. There are certain criteria in terms of the size of the project, at least in the metro areas, in terms of the revenue they will generate, in terms of the investment required. There are also certain criteria that we have for where the money / visitorship will come from. There's a requirement of a certain percentage that would be from out of state, that would be from out of the region, and that's part of the feasibility and studies that they do, along with the financial studies. That's a requirement to identify again whether the project will be financially feasible, and also what is the market area and where will the visitors come from. Because again, the idea is to attract dollars from other places, and also the other component is to keep dollars in Kansas that might be going elsewhere otherwise. The benefit, again, and it's a pretty substantial benefit in some cases, is the state and local sales tax increment that then can be dedicated to fund eligible project costs. And there is a list of eligible project costs. With very few exceptions, we cannot do vertical construction with STAR bonds. It's primarily intended for infrastructure. You can buy the land, you can do the roads, the sewers, water, those sorts of things. There are a couple of exceptions. If it's a standalone museum, the construction costs associated with that are allowed. And also if certain types of multi-sport facilities can also be eligible vertical construction. But again, mostly it goes towards infrastructure costs along with land acquisition. We have had, the law also does allow in cases where the state and local sales tax increment does not appear to be sufficient to make the project feasible in terms of the revenue stream to service the bonds. It is possible that we can ask for the increment of local transient guest tax, and also there's some other prescriptions for increasing the amount of revenue to make the STAR bonds flow and work financially. You're probably familiar with some of the projects. The Speedway was a STAR bond project, the actual Speedway proper itself. The Village West Legends area was a STAR bond project. The salt mine in Hutch was a smaller STAR bond project. Some of the downtown redo and the Prairie Discovery Center that's in Manhattan was a STAR bond project. There's a Water Walk STAR bond project in Wichita that's up and operating. Heartland Park was kind of a special case where the legislature passed special legislation for that particular project, and it's a STAR bond project. One of them that's currently in construction that's gotten quite a bit of attention, particularly in the Kansas City press, is called Prairie Fire in Overland Park, and it will the STAR bond piece of it is a museum that will house exhibits that come from the American Museum of Natural History in New York. That's the kind of the core of the destination piece, and a variety of other things are in part of that also. And then we have several that are in process right now that are either in construction or we're in the process of review of their applications. But again, you approve the district first, and then the actual project has to be approved, and then a cap or an amount of eligible STAR bonds or STAR bond eligibility is established for each of these projects. The Job Creation Fund is a fairly new program in terms of at least the name and the nomenclature, and it's designed to provide some discretionary funding / cash that can be used strategically to meet specific project needs and fill funding gaps not met by other sources. And essentially it's a closing fund, which we find is very important currently in economic development. The eligibility criteria, we have to have an identified demonstrated need, and again, this is not something that is part of the process early on. This is typically kind of the last piece of a project funding. If there's a need that hasn't been met, if there's a critical issue that we need to get over, that can typically be used. The benefit, again, is cash. Typically, we provide that on some sort of a schedule. It isn't usually all up front. Typically, we'll establish a set of milestones, whether it be certain levels of progression, the creation of a certain number of jobs, completion of the project, those kinds of things. Performance-based, in a milestone situation, they don't get the money till they get to that point that triggers the award or that portion of the award. We have done some projects where we provide the money up front, typically smaller amounts, and in those projects, they have specific criteria that they meet. If they don't meet, then they have to pay money back, which is what you see on that last criteria. Again, went through those very, very quickly. There'll be an opportunity certainly for questions either now or as we get further into the program.
Good morning. I'm Susan Newpoke Cataray, and I'm the Assistance Manager. I have a team of 9 staff that cover the state. We are divided in regions in this way, and these regions are actually identified for our deliveries purposes only. There's no connection to any local identified groups. That we have some regional groups and such that sit within our boundaries, but ours is strictly for our delivery services and purposes. The existing, we're charged with working directly with Kansas businesses and startup businesses. And we meet face-to-face with them, with businesses. We work very closely with the local economic development and Chamber of Commerce, and actually in some of the smaller communities we'll work with the city clerk in identifying companies, local companies that are either wanting to expand, or maybe there's a retention issue, or there's a possibility that they're just looking for some resource that sits outside of the Department of Commerce. It's very common for us to be making referrals to both the Department of Revenue and also to the Department of Transportation. In FY13, we made 1,299 face-to-face business contacts within the state of Kansas. We will go through, when we meet with a business, we will visit with them, we'll do a brief little interview with them, and we will get a feel for what their needs are. And then we will identify the appropriate program that meets their needs. And as Steve stated, he went through some of the higher level programs that will identify which programs they'll qualify for, and we will also walk them through the application process for applying for those. We additionally will make referrals to other agencies or entities outside of our agency. Network Kansas is one that we do quite often, especially for startup businesses. And the small business development centers, a lot of times we're working with businesses and make referrals to that agency. In FY13, one company that the team met with was Kuhn Cross at Hutchison. They're a manufacturer of agricultural equipment. Their current employment at the time of the meeting was 306 employees, and their average wage for those existing positions was $56,000. The project was calling for 50 new jobs over a 2-year period with an average wage of $31,200. They were making a $6 million capital investment in new building and $4 million in new equipment. The regional project manager met with the company to determine their eligibility for the following. They qualified with their capital investment, and based on the community they were located in, they qualified for $995,000 in High Performance Incentive Program, or HPIP tax credits. They qualified for $225,000 in project exemption from sales tax on the new building and equipment. They qualified for $90,000 in Promoting Employment Across Kansas, or PEAK program, and they were offered industrial training or KIT programs, but they did not pursue that or did not complete their applications. A lot of times what we find are companies will make the initial make that initial application but won't follow through to, so what our records show a lot, what we propose to a company and what they actually take advantage of can be a big difference. The other area that the team is charged with is the community development assistance. This one we work predominantly with communities smaller than 5,000. We find that communities with a population of 5,000 and over typically have professional staff on hand, so the resources that we provide are not necessarily required or requested. But I will tell you, I cover the Kansas City metro area, and I have met with some of the city managers to talk about some of the issues that they have and talk about possible resources. Probably the most frequently discussion are CIDs, tax increment financing. That's the community improvement districts. Thank you. I just went, and then downtown improvement districts and neighborhood revitalization programs are the predominantly what I talk with larger communities about. We also cover the CDBG program in the rural communities. We are the marketing team for the Community Development Block Grant Program, and we all, in the smaller communities, will help promote the PRIDE program. The other area of community development that we have been focusing on in recent years, we are finding that a lot of times the community leaders on the local level are needing some education on what is economic development, getting a better understanding of what are the opportunities for their communities in the area of economic development. So we provide resource fairs, which is actually we invite various resource entities and agencies in to have the fair. We just most recently had one a couple weeks ago in Pratt. And then we also provide Economic Development 101 and Chamber of Commerce 101, which are just really geared towards getting people on the same playing field in the local community.